Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming. I'm Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. Our topic tonight is mindfulness, and our guest is Allison Peet. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, Dr. Deming. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for being here. Allison is a colleague and a friend, and we're going to first of all get to know you a little bit, and then we're going to talk about the very important topic of mindfulness, what it is, and how it can enrich our lives. But first, let's learn about you. So, Allison, where are you from originally?
I grew up in Dubuque.
In Dubuque, Iowa. Went to high school there, I imagine.
I did. I grew up in Dubuque. I went to Hempstead. I'm a graduate there. Then I went over to University of Northern Iowa for my college experience.
So back to high school, though. This important question. What was your claim to fame in high school?
Oh my gosh. I don't think I was that famous. I was both a jock and I was in music, so maybe that was it. I was kind of a jack of all trades. I loved sports, but I also loved music, so I was in the choir.
Too. What was your best sport?
Volleyball. I'm 5'10". So so that I was always the middle, and I was always in the choir. I was always in the back with the guys.
So did you have a good volleyball team when you were in high school? Did you get to go to the state tournament?
We weren't that good to go to state, but we had some really good talent there. So yeah, I had a great time. It was wonderful.
And then you went to UNI. What was your first declared major when you started UNI?
I declared it was called graphic communications at the time. So it's not even called that anymore. So that makes me feel not so young anymore. I just actually went there this fall with my son, who is looking at colleges. He's a junior in high school now. So that was talk about just mind-blowing to be there with my husband, who I met there. I met my now husband at UNI with my son. I'm like, we're not supposed to be this old, are we? So yeah, and that was in the Industrial Technology Building, which looks nothing like it did back then. They have completely renovated that space, and there's so much technology now compared to 25 years ago or so. So I decided that I was good at kind of the design aspect of it. And then I wanted to also get into the marketing and management side. But by the time I got out and got into the real world, I decided that wasn't my thing.
So what were some of the core classes that you took in your major?
Oh my gosh, you're asking really hard questions. Like this has been such a long time ago. Let me see. So core was more, like you mean on the general education side of it, or more on my
major? For your major, like what would be the name?
So desktop publishing was one of the major ones that was called.
Okay.
So there was still, let's see, Adobe Illustrator, those different software packages that with graphic design and putting those together. I probably would not even recognize those software programs if I looked at them today. It's just with technology, it is leaps and bounds ahead of where we were before. So
I took Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I did what was it called? I did a internship at Quad Graphics. So it's a really huge printing industry it's out of Milwaukee. So I did an internship there, and the printers were sizes of houses. So you could literally walk on them. So like lots of really cool, really, really huge magazines that were there, like Home and Garden and things like that are distributed all over the place. That's where those are printed and distributed. And so I had a really interesting college experience. It was really cool to be able to learn, where do we even get this from, and how is it designed? How is it distributed? Manufacturing and things like that. So it was a really interesting experience. I'm so glad I have it now. It probably has helped me more than I know in my profession.
What was your first job then out of college?
I was in a sales position for a printing company. It was called Wolverton Printing in Cedar Falls. And I think they're still in business. They hired me to do outside sales. And so I was there for a couple years until I decided that this the printing industry is not as exciting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it's time to fast forward.
Yeah.
When did the concept of mindfulness
Oh my God.
first come into your consciousness?
That's a great question. It wasn't until I would have been in my late 20s, because I had very small children at the time. So my second born was, I was, it was about, yeah, in my late 20s. And I was experiencing high stress, little kids working full time, lots of anxiety, even kind of, I dealt with postpartum depression after both my children were born. And I didn't discover the word mindfulness until I was talking to one of my very best friends. She was working at the University of Iowa at the time. And at that time, they were able to take this specialized course called mindfulness-based stress reduction for free because they were employees of the university. And I was talking to her about how hard this babies were, and life was just really hard, and I was not keeping up very well. And she's like, well, I'm actually taking this class. It's called mindfulness-based stress reduction. And that's the first time I had ever heard the word mindfulness. Didn't know what it was at the time. I had no idea, but I knew what stress reduction meant. And the way she talked about it, I was very intrigued. And that was kind of the first experience of that word. And that class is how I really start to learn about what that actually was.
And so then you enrolled in the class?
I tried. So I even thought about, I couldn't find a teacher in Des Moines. So I knew that they were teaching it live in person in Iowa City. So it was a once a week class for 8 weeks. They met for about 2.5 hours every night. And I thought about going and staying over at my friend's house and taking it because I was really ready. I was needing to help myself, and I needed to intervene because I didn't really have a lot of stress coping mechanisms with how high my stress was. And I could tell that I needed to do something about it. I could help myself in that way. And so long story short, I decided to take it online, but it's not on what we think about online is now, especially because of COVID. There's been so many wonderful, like what we're doing right now. I mean, this was not a thing back then,
Yeah.
So I took it through the University of Massachusetts Medical School, where it all started with John Kabat-Zinn. So his predecessors made a whole pre-recorded asynchronous, I think it's probably called now, asynchronous course where you could just take it as you needed to, and you could take as long as you wanted. And I was watching videos of people talking at me, and it was just me and this other person that was already pre-recorded. And I was shocked at how mindless I had actually been, how not very mindful. I feel like many of my students, we have a lot of conversations about that. When you actually start to learn about what mindfulness actually is, you start to realize just how mindless many of us as human beings can be, right? How very easily it is to be able to get on autopilot, even for our whole lives. A lot of people go their whole lives without really understanding what it is to be in the present moment.
So let me have you then explain to us would you define mindfulness, and maybe as you're explaining it, how would you compare and contrast it to what people might think of as meditation?
Yeah, great question. And I get this question all the time, especially in my introductory sessions with my clients that are interested in learning more about this. So it was maybe it would probably be interesting to kind of start this with a story. When I first started taking that class, again, it was just me and this other person that was on the screen and my little earbuds in and really starting to learn about what this was. Our first exercise was mindful eating. It was an exercise in eating a raisin. So John Kabat-Zinn has always been, he's the creator of this program. It's been around since 1975. So it needs to be the raisin, because raisins are, we just don't think about them very often. They're just very plain. And usually we just kind of throw them back and eat them, and we don't think so much about it. So I specifically remember, again, it's pre-recorded. And they asked for you to bring 2 or 3 different raisins. So like multiple ones. And I had them in front of me, and they said, okay, now take the first one. And, it was like a guided thing where I was just listening to a recording, and I didn't even notice that I chewed it and swallowed it before I even realized what I was doing. And then the recording comes on and says, so if you already swallowed it without realizing it, that's okay. Just recognize that that's what it means to be on autopilot and that you're not fully there yet. And that's why we said to bring two. That's why we was praying to bring more so that you could try this again. And I just laughed. I laughed out loud, and I was shocked at myself because I just wasn't aware, right? It just, when you're not mindful, you're not aware that you're not mindful. It's just, this is what normally it is. It's just to be lost in my thinking mind all the time. And so that was the first kind of wake up moment that I had. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. And that's been about 13 or 14 years ago now that I had that very first mindful eating exercise of an eating meditation. And so what that really taught me was that it's like, wow, well, if I can't fully be here to eat a raisin, which I didn't like at the time, like I don't really even like raisins, but when I really ate it and I really paid attention to it, I'm like, well, they're not that bad. So that's interesting. Like if I can't be fully present with eating one little tiny raisin, like what else in my life am I not being present for? So I talk with my students a lot. I went through that kind of almost a period of grief where it's like, well, my kids are already, what they were maybe like 5 and 3 at the time. Like I probably missed a lot of them as babies because I was always in the next thing. What's the next thing? Especially for young parents. I feel like a lot of times you need to be into that, the future in order to kind of stay on top of things. But if you start to live there, which that's where I was, and that's where a lot of my anxiety came through, is that I didn't understand what it meant to really fully be in the present moment, to really understand what it was really like to be a human being. So that's, I tell that story because that I feel like helps as a metaphor of like, what is mindfulness? Because many people have different ways of talking about it. And every time somebody asks me that, I feel like I have a different response because of how I am right now. Like, what does it mean to me right now? Because it meant something to me differently 10 years ago. It'll probably mean something different to me 10 years in the future because we're always changing.
So I have a question. Can you follow up with the second raisin and contrast your behavior with that second raisin? So again, this is your first class. You're not really a mindfulness expert yet. You're even just still learning what mindfulness is. But what was the course? How did the course teach you, tell you, bring you along to eat the second raisin?
Yeah. Yep. So the speaker in my ear was like, okay, go ahead and pick that one out, that other one up. And, just really think about slowing down and noticing what is it about this raisin that, you're actually allowing this energy, right? Food is energy, right? We are made of energy. You're allowing this object to kind of come into your own being. And I was really, I love food. I love to eat. I love to cook. And so I let myself really enjoy. I let myself savor. I let myself, there was even prompts in there about like, what's your tongue doing? Like you're chewing, when you chew, it's not just up and down, like your teeth are kind of moving back and forth. And can you actually pause and be conscious for one swallow? Because a lot of times, like I notice when I eat a salad, sometimes I'm like fishing around. I eat and then I'm chewing, and while I'm chewing, I'm fishing around for the next bite, or I'm talking with someone, or we tend to multitask a lot with food, and food is a wonderful way to practice mindfulness and to practice gratitude at the same time too. So it was almost like a light bulb that kind of just struck for me that I'm like, wow, this is actually enjoyable. And I thought I didn't like raisins. They're kind of meh, to me. But there's so much metaphor around that, because the breath can be the same way. Many of us think that like, oh, it's just, it happens. I don't really have to pay attention to it. But at the same time, it can be absolutely, it's life-giving. It's life-sustaining. It's a miracle that it's actually happening right now. And food can be the same way. If you really dial up, if you tune into your attention and your awareness of what's actually happening, that you can really start to dial up your how this is, I can't think of the word right now, how this is coming up for you, and how much it's a wonderful experience.
But you do have to choose what you're going to be mindful of, and I know some of it is a kind of an experiment, not an experiment, but it's sort of a focused attention. But as you mentioned, you could be focusing on the raisin, you could be focusing on your breath, you could be focusing on some pain you have in your right ankle, but you choose what to be mindful about. So there is a choice there. And so when I tell patients about your service and we hook patients up, I always start this way, like, right this second, here in this room, you and I, as I'm facing my patient, you and I have everything we need for perfect joy this second. Right here in this room is when we start thinking about who dissed us yesterday or what might happen tomorrow, that we lose this moment, and that Allison is going to coach you into having more of these moments and help you recognize when your mind is just perseverating. It's okay to reflect on yesterday and plan for tomorrow, but if you
Right.
find yourself just your mind gets kidnapped and the next thing you know, you're thinking about the cancer coming back and having a
Right.
funeral and missing your kid's wedding, how do you bring it here and now? So how would you say, how do you work with our patients that come to you for some coaching on mindfulness?
Yeah, we start very simply because you're right. The kind of true definition of mindfulness is choicefully, like you said, choosing to be in the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. Our lives are always unfolding in moments, and we pay attention to that moment as if it really mattered, right? Because it does. We're only living right here, right now. We can't live 10 minutes from now. We can't live 10 minutes ago. So in a very real way, we need to start to train ourselves to be more deliberate, to be more choiceful in what is actually happening now. So I don't miss those moments. I don't miss those moments because I'm, living in a daydream, frankly. So what the raisin serves as, what the breath serves as, what sound serves as, what these different things serve as is an anchor, right? So mindfulness, there's lots of different types of meditation out there, and there's wonderful different types of meditation. Mindfulness is a type of meditation, right? It's the formal practice. The formal practice of mindfulness is meditation. So and our lives is a meditation, right? When you really start to think about it, we're always focusing on something. A lot of times it's not the present moment. It's always, it's something different, but the awareness is paramount, right? We have to start to be aware of like when my mind wanders, not if. And these anchors serve as a single pointed focus that is related to the present moment, right? It's we can only eat now. We can only breathe now. We can only listen to sound now. So these are all different. I talk about it as different doors into the same room. And it's very simple. It sounds very simple, like just focus on your breath or just eat a raisin. Just listen to what's going on. But we know that that's not it. It's not easy, right? It's simple. It's not easy because our minds are meant to think. Our minds are meant to go into the past and the future because that's literally what our brains are designed to do, is they're designed to think. And so that's a lot of what I talk with my students about is like, many people say, well, I'm a bad meditator because my mind is so busy. And I'm like, you're not special. Sorry to say, all of our minds are busy. And so that's why I think it's just such a beautiful practice because we begin to teach ourselves. This is a skill, just like we can learn to cook, just like we learn a new language, just like we train to climb the mountain we were just talking about. It is something that we can work at our own pace at, right? You can go climb on a mountain and go for a month-long retreat and meditate on the present moment for as long as you want. But you can also be in your own life and still be a mother, still be a father, still be a friend, and still live your life normally, but also bring a more wakeful presence to what you're actually doing. It really starts to, there's so many benefits, and I know we can talk about that, and you're very aware of all of those, but our relationships start to change. Our relationships to ourselves start to change. because we're actually able to live our lives as if they're important.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
isn't one of the key concepts, as you mentioned, we have evolved to be always thinking. We've been
Right.
evolved to be worried that things are going to happen, or that part of the key concept of mindfulness is to recognize when your mind is wandering. And as you
Right.
said, nobody's a perfect mindfulness specimen, and that the one of the key concepts is to learn how to recognize
Hmm.
as quickly as possible that your mind is wandering, and to bring it back. It's
Right.
not it's not to be perfect, it's to recognize and to bring it back, and you might
Right.
have to do that 10 times in a minute.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the challenge, right? And when we start to judge that, we start to judge the thinking mind, and then that actually starts to make it worse, right? I should be able to focus on the breath, or I should be able to focus on this one thing. But when we start to judge that reactivity, right, of being hard on ourselves or judging ourselves for the mind to even having wandered to begin with, that's what makes it. That's when people say, like, oh, I'm no good at meditating because I can't focus. But it's that is what neuroplasticity, that is the basis of neuroplasticity in its essence, is that because how we are using our minds, right, when we start to recognize and acknowledge that the mind wandered and we guide it back to whatever anchor that we've chosen, that is actually changing your thought processes. When you change the way your mind works, you can actually literally eventually over time change the anatomical structures of the brain. So we become less reactive. We are more responsive. We are more kind of calm, even in the face of stress. They've actually hooked up very long-term meditators. Some of them are monks that they'll hook up to. I think they're called the functional fMRIs, where they read their brain activity, and they have their amygdalas, which is that alarm sound in the brain that signals danger. They are so small, like the gray and white matter actually shrinks around the amygdala because they have put so many hours of this type of practice of present moment awareness, so that like they're much less reactive than the normal brain. It actually shows up on scans. It's fascinating in that way as well. So there's a funny quote out there that I think her name's Sharon Salzberg. She's a very famous meditation teacher. She said, we don't get better. We don't practice meditation to get better at meditation. We practice meditation to get better at living. And that is so, so true. We're not out there to become Olympic meditators or Olympic body scanners, right? So the body scan practice is a very famous mindfulness practice. We're doing that so that we can, when we get a cancer diagnosis, for instance, in this, and the mind just starts going crazy about what ifs, and it goes down that rabbit hole of negative thinking. We can start to pull ourselves back and realize that this is just thought. Thought feels real in the body, right? Our body responds to everything that we think, but we can start to decipher that thoughts is just thoughts. They aren't dangerous, what these thoughts are, but this is an ability to be able to be where we are and really start to focus on, like, what can I control, right? Are these thoughts actually accurate? Are they helpful? And we can choose to. That's the essence of this practice. It's like, what thoughts do I want to actually engage with? And what thoughts are like, this isn't helpful? I can learn to let those go, and they don't have to affect my nervous system so much.
And you started down this path, but a little bit more comparing and contrasting mindfulness and meditation.
Sure.
People who don't meditate might think of, that you've got to be in a lotus posture on a cushion and in a very still, and that some people also may associate it with particular religious
Right.
theologies even. So maybe talk about the difference and how mindfulness is a component of meditation, but that its essence is very secular and
Yeah. Yeah, so we could probably talk all night about the where did mindfulness come and is it religious, is it not? But how I understand it, in my opinion, is and this I know this is fact, is that mindfulness is the heart of Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy. So mindfulness is at the root of Buddhism. However, when you bring out mindfulness by itself, it is, like you said, secular. It is universal. It's mainstream. It's a human capacity. So you don't have to be any religion. You could be any religion. You don't have to be Buddhist to practice it. It's a human capacity of having a human heart, a human brain. And I've heard it called, it's the science of mind. This is a science of mind. And so it's, the difference we talk about, what is the difference between meditation and mindfulness? So I kind of alluded to it, how I describe it. And again, this is my understanding of it. So it might not be completely the ultimate truth, but is, there's, again, lots of different styles of meditation out there. Mindfulness is a type of meditation. So the formal practice of mindfulness would be to practice meditation. What meditation is stilling the mind on a single pointed focus. And then also another way to practice meditation is to be kind of just aware of what you're being aware of, right? So this is also called like an open monitoring meditation, where you don't really have a focus. You're just the focus would be the present moment, right? So present moment is always kind of moving through us. But no, you don't. Well, when you practice meditation, that supercharges that neuroplasticity. That is the basis of the MBSR class, right? So you're practicing meditation about 45 minutes a day, 30 to 45 minutes a day is kind of the gold standard for MBSR. But that's not, you can, even 10 minutes of practice actually of meditation has been known to study that helps people sleep better, that helps people have less reactive minds. It lowers anxiety. There's lots of different benefits of it. But you can also practice it in a way of like right now. I mean, both of us are practicing mindfulness because we're really focusing and working on just being here and just listening to the questions and fully being here and noticing when my mind will go off, like, oh, I forgot. I was supposed to come back to this and back to this conversation. So we can practice mindfulness in any moment. It's just, I'm going to quote another one of my teachers, Joseph Goldstein. He would say, awareness itself is easy. Awareness itself it's what it means to be human. It's our birthright. But remembering to be aware is hard. The remembering part is the hard part because we are just wired that way. And if we've never been taught in this way, even especially as children, to practice in this way of like just a few minutes every day, just sit quietly, focus on your breathing, or listen to your birds that are singing in your backyard. That counts. I have to say it over and over and over again to my students. They're like, well, it only works if it's meditation, or like, I can't get this 20 minutes or 30 minutes in. Do you have 5 minutes? If you have 5 minutes, that's fine. And if you can't sit still for 5 minutes, maybe 1 minute, that's fine too. You start where you are. That's why I feel like this practice is so forgiving in that way, is that it meets you where you are. If you just practice eating one meal without getting up and going to change the laundry, or without listening to the radio, or without doing something else, that's practice, and it all really builds on itself.
Would you be willing to lead us through 1 minute, 2 minute mindfulness exercise, and then we can talk more about it? But for those who haven't maybe ever done this, give us a bit of an experience.
Absolutely. So how about like 1 to 2 minutes? Does that sound okay?
Yes.
And that helps people that have never practiced either, like, oh my gosh, how long am I going to be in there for? It sounds kind of scary. Like, I don't want to get into my mind by myself without. So that helps that it's only 1 to 2 minutes. So you're welcome to follow along. And if not, you don't have to, right? This is all very voluntary, just an invitation to check in on yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and close my eyes. I really think that that's very helpful, but you don't have to. So you're welcome to let your eyes close, either partially or fully. Again, like Dr. Deming said, Full lotus means sitting on the floor with your feet crossed, and most of us are not able to do that comfortably. So however you are sitting or lying down or standing, that's good enough for you in this moment. And it's so interesting when we pause, when we come into stillness and we let our eyes close, but we're with this intention of being awake, right? Because most of us, when we close our eyes and get comfortable, we fall asleep. This is the intentionality of falling awake to what's actually happening. So what is happening here in this present moment as you begin to close your eyes and allow this energy to come closer into your experience? Maybe you start to notice that you're a little warm, right? Maybe you start to notice, well, oh, my hands are kind of cold. Do you notice your feet connected to the floor? You start to notice that there could be a little bit of tension that you're holding that you didn't realize was there. Can you kind of let your shoulders fall away from the ears a bit? Is the brow furrowed? Because sometimes we tend to hold tension around the face. Can you soften in the face as well? And I mentioned the breath. Breath is a wonderful anchor to the present moment. When you're aware of your breath, you're actually practicing mindfulness. You're actually aware that you're living in a human body with a human mind. So maybe just take 3 breaths. And if the mind wanders, not a problem. If you start to wonder, this is silly, or I can't do this, recognize that as thought. That's just another thought that's happening. You can let that go too. You can let that be there. So as you take a conscious breath, notice what you notice about it. That's it. It's very simple. It's breathing in and recognizing, okay, I can feel sensations in my nostrils. I can feel my chest or my belly expanding. And as I exhale, what do I notice? How am I feeling this breath versus thinking about this breath? So there's this mode, right, of going from doing and thinking mode to being and feeling. So I haven't been watching the time, but I'm assuming that's about that time here. But I would like you, before we kind of close this little mini meditation, just to take a moment to notice the state of your nervous system. You took some time to settle in, to really focus on your breath, to kind of let the bells and whistles, let the world kind of take a break from that external world. Notice if you feel a little bit heavier in your seat. Notice if you notice that the mind might not be as the spinning, right, as full as it normally is. And then when you're ready, you can start to open the eyes. And I always like to do this first. This is kind of my little transition in between our meditation and our rest of our living. When I first started practicing, my eyes would come open and I would just fly off the chair and like ready to go do something else. And I would quote unquote like lose the practice of, connection. But can you, while your eyes are open, while both of us, our eyes are open and we're conversing with each other, we're starting to become more externalized versus internal when we come into meditation, is that can you still feel your feet against the floor? Can you still feel your sit bones against the chair? Do you notice an inhale or an exhale between sentences? Or when you're listening to someone, can you feel your breath? So these are little small moments like that we pull in. We take this out of our meditation practice so that we are fully present for ourselves, so that we can always be fully present for those that are around us. And that means a great deal, right? That is, our attention is one of our most valuable experiences, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So one of my observations in doing this with you is, you're talking through, I'm listening to you, it's giving me a prompt, it provides me the anchor. I can just do this with you talking to me. If you're not there and you're telling me go off and do it by myself, as a beginner, um, I have a harder time focusing because I have to tell myself and you're not, there's not your voice there, and so I'm not aware as quickly that my mind is wandering as when I'm hearing your voice and, oh yes, there's your voice. I'm going back to your voice. Um, so obviously that comes with practice.
100%. Yeah, and that's why having a guide, there are so many different apps out there.
Mhm.
My most favorite one is Insight Timer, INSIGHT. It's a free app. Um, Thousands and hundreds of thousands of meditations. And as a beginner, it's really wonderful to be able to have that voice that helps you come back to, because it's just, think about when you first learned to ride a bike or when you first learned something new. It was hard and it took effort, but the more that you practice with it, instruments are always a thing. We have to have hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice in order to start to feel like, oh, I can just go through this melody, right, without having to think about it. And the same thing goes with our bodies. Our bodies and our minds will adapt to that stimulus that you offer it. And if you continue to practice, giving yourself a hard time when your mind comes back and, berating yourself, that's what's going to get stronger. How we practice is what gets stronger. So when we start to practice gentleness, we start to practice, discipline, but also kindness for ourselves. That is what's going to get stronger in the mind. So it's just a wonderful way to, again, you can start it a minute at a time. And it's always really, as a beginner, it's really nice to have those recordings. And eventually my students, and I know I started to notice that my first couple of years of practice too, was that you'll start to notice that the guidance starts to become a distraction, so it's like, well, maybe I do need to let that go a little bit more or have more moments of silence in between some of that guidance so that you start to recognize that you are also a guide. You know what's best for you and that you can follow your own voice instead of always having to follow somebody else. It's nothing wrong with that. And it's, and I go back to guided meditations because I just love how some people talk about mindfulness and it's
Yeah.
just inspiring, so, but I also love silence, right? Like I love to be able to just dip into that. And, I hated it when I first started practicing. I didn't know what to do with myself. Like in yoga, you take a yoga class and at the end they have you do shavasana, which means corpse pose, and they have you lay down. That used to be the hardest part for me when I would take yoga, that to just, there was silence, there was nothing to do. And I'm like, what are we doing? I got to get going. I have things to do. I was ready to just jump off the mat. But it's like, after some practice, it's like, that's my favorite, right? It's
Part,
just like,
yeah.
oh, right. It's interesting how
Okay.
things start to change.
Well, let's talk a little science now. So, mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, John Kabat-Zinn, University of Massachusetts. There's probably few interventions as well studied as mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's
Right.
evidence-based. It's been shown to have lots of medical benefits. So maybe review with us, what are the proven benefits to individuals who do the formal MBSR training?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've already kind of alluded to it, that we're doing sort of mindfulness, but we're not really doing mindfulness-based stress reduction as an
Right.
8-week program that's a very formal program. But if one
Right.
were to do that, what are some of the proven benefits of mindfulness-based stress reduction?
Yeah, one of the studies that has come to mind recently, I think it's been a few years now, maybe in 2022, there was a study on anti-anxiety medication. There was a group that both groups had anxiety, but one group that they studied took anti-anxiety medication, and the other group took mindfulness-based stress reduction for 8 weeks. And after 8 weeks, both groups had a 20% reduction in their anxiety symptoms. So that you could easily say that MBSR can be as effective as anti-anxiety medication. There's a laundry list of benefits. A lot of the actual studies are probably going to escape me here at this moment, but the best ones that I have, again, noticed in my own practice and also discovered in the my students that take MBSR is that our immune system is actually raised. So that was kind of a study, if I can remember right, with John Kabat-Zinn and others. I think it was the University of Wisconsin. They studied the MBSR program with the flu shot with actually healthy individuals. They had a control group that was not taking the program, and they had a MBSR group. After 8 weeks, they gave both groups the flu shot, the flu vaccine, and they noticed immediately that the MBSR group had more of immune response to that flu shot. And even I think they did it again. They did another flu shot 3 or 4 months later, and that MBSR group had a greater immune response as well. So especially cold and flu season, especially for patients that have compromised immune systems, that is a huge one, right? So it helps our immune response. It helps to lots and lots of studies around sleep. I'm sure your patients talk to you about that too. Many of my students talk about troubles with getting to staying asleep. That is also a wonderful benefit. One that's kind of interesting is people become better communicators. And I think that's just a wonderful one, because they probably without even realizing it, they're practicing more mindfulness within relationship. It's a different, your relationality starts to change with yourself. And then, those people that are more attuned to themselves and attuned to the present moment, that can stay in those conversations, even when it becomes difficult, that their needs get met more and better. And thus, you're kind of getting off the script. If you're always doing something that's on script, especially with people that you're around a lot, and you go off script, that forces that other person to go off script too. And so that's another lovely, interesting thing that comes up too.
Yeah. And some of the other benefits that are proven is reducing blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, mindfulness-based stress reduction can reduce blood pressure. It also can be very effective in managing pain.
Right.
So we usually think, I need medication for pain. Actually, MBSR can reduce perceived pain.
Right.
Some people wonder, well, how can it do all of these things? But as you know, there's not really a separation of mind and body.
Exactly.
So we all recognize, let's say you go to take the garbage out and you open the back door and a dog barks, and you physiologically feel your mouth get dry. You feel your heart pounding. You have this major physiologic response that you can detect. The opposite response happens, but it isn't as obvious when you are sitting like we are and talking. There is a physiologic response that's happening. It isn't quite as dramatic, so we don't notice it, but just like we have a heartbeat go up and all of these other physiologic fight and flight, we have an opposite but still measurable impact on heart rate, blood pressure, immune chemicals, antibiotics. All of that can happen. And as we get the opportunity to daily practice this intentional mindfulness, our body changes. You mentioned neuroplasticity, which, the brain can actually change anatomically in ways that we can see on MRI scans.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like this practice is it's a game changer. It's an ability to work more directly with our nervous system. So that's what I feel like when my immune system goes down. It's like when I'm always in that fight or flight mode. I'm not giving myself a break. So I've discovered that the more that I'm in that type of revved up state, the more I need to practice going into the opposite in that rest and recovery mode. Because again, your body starts to adapt based on how you practice. So when you start to practice more regularly and consistently, it's like it has this muscle memory where it's like, oh yeah, I do know where my baseline should be, and I come back down. So I think that has to do with the blood pressure, has to do with heart rate, and so that we can start to have more have a little bit more connection to the nervous system spikes, and to be more adaptive, I guess is what I'm trying to say too.
We're going to open up for questions. We've got about 15 minutes left. So we have a live studio audience here. You guys get to ask the first questions. If you're watching us live streaming right now, you can put your question into the comment section of the software you're using to watch us. But we'll start in the room here. Poon, you get the first question.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, Poon. How are you?
Good.
Good to hear you. I can't see you, but
That's all right. Hey, you talked about mindfulness and staying awake while you're practicing. So how about those of us who wakes up at 3 a.m.? How can we use mindfulness to go back to sleep?
Yes. I've had those moments of my life where it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and you get into your mind about it, like, oh my gosh, if I just had 2 or 3 more hours, I'd be able to have a good day. And you really get into the mind about it. So that's, I would first practice just being with your breath, right? So one, you can always go to Insight Timer on your phone. That I love that app. It's really wonderful because that really helps me to get out of my mind, right? So when I really start to listen and follow along with somebody else's voice, I know that helps me to get back into that rest and digest phase. I also place one hand, I'm doing it already without even realizing, I place one hand on my chest and one hand on my abdomen and just do really long, slow, deep breaths, right? So I know in a lot of your classes, I've heard a lot of my patients will talk about the 4-7-8 breath, right? So that's a really good one to help calm the nervous system down. It's an inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, and then exhale for 8 counts. You'll notice that 8 counts, that's twice as long as the exhale, is twice as long as your inhale. The exhale is always about that parasympathetic nervous system rest and recovery. So you want to make sure exhales as long and slow as possible. And then I kind of feel like just placing your hands on these nerve ending areas of the heart and the gut is like telling your body that you're safe, telling your body to kind of come back into that relaxation. I've spent hours and hours in bed sometimes just like trying all the things, right? 4-7-8 box breathing, which I guess I should talk about. Box breathing or 4x4 is another one that helps elongate the breath, which also helps that body to come back down into that parasympathetic tone. Is inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, exhaling for 4 counts, and then holding the breath for 4 counts. So it's like you're breathing into a box or 4x4. So that's lengthening out the breath. I try all those first. I never look at my clock. I try not to look too much at my phone either. I just get right on my app and start to listen to it. If that fails, then I get up and I practice walking meditation. So sometimes just kind of, I don't know, shaking it up or something, right? To like get out of the room that you're in. Again, still it needs to be dark and quiet, but just move yourself a little bit, right? Walking meditation means very slow, very mindful movements of just like feeling your feet on the floor. And then I return, right? So those are some really good tips and some kind of real world things that I know help me, and I know that I've helped students over the years too.
Great.
Thanks, Poon.
Yep.
Good to hear from you.
Okay. Rowan?
Yeah. Hello, Allison.
Hi.
I understand that meditation helps in calming our mind. And my question is there any kind of food or drinks or beverages, if a person takes in, right, that would hinder in an effective meditation? Because I've read some books where yogis, they abstain from eating certain kind of food or drinking certain kinds of drinks like caffeine. So if you drink caffeine, anxiety increases, and they avoid eating too much of meat or no meat at all. So yeah, my question is like, is there any food, drinks, beverages, or any practices that would hinder from an effective meditation or calming down our mind?
That's a great question too. I'm not an expert on that at all. This is just anecdotal and with my own education and exploring and practicing and just experimenting on myself mostly too. So I have to kind of just talk about that. That's my expertise here is myself. But what I've discovered and I've also heard, especially through yoga, is like, you don't want to be too full and you don't want to be too empty either as far as like the general types of food. I'm really not familiar with like the types of food that would, or drink other than caffeine for sure, would hinder our mindfulness practice and that ability to kind of come down and come back down into relaxation. But what I have noticed is that, if you really start to pay attention and you really start to become more mindful of your biological processes, that water actually wakes me up a little bit more. It's kind of an interesting thing to like bring water in. I noticed that on a retreat, I drank some water in because I was super, super tired, and all of a sudden I felt a little bit more wakeful. Food enlivens, right? So it's like I would imagine the very fatty and lots of calories and very dense, like think about how you feel. Do you feel more sluggish when you eat that? And typically that's probably not conducive for meditation and for feeling more, balanced and at ease. I think that's probably different per person. What I've noticed is that if I eat anything too close to bedtime, probably at least 2 hours, that I don't sleep as well either. So I've just kind of noticed that, it's good for me to just watch that before bed, right? When you really start to pay attention of like, what's going to help me ease into the type of state that I want to be in, to, eat a little bit more within the rhythms of body, of daytime, of nighttime, of those.
Okay. And our next question is from Pearl.
Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for your insights on mindfulness, because it's really been informative and helpful. So
Thank
the
you.
question I have, and one of the things I struggle with when it comes to like maybe meditation, is like I've heard about like emptying of your mind, and coming from like a Christian theology where one of the ways we meditate or that's talked about is focusing on God and fixing yourself on him or on scripture and then meditating, but then that would be like prayer. So is prayer encompassed in mindfulness? So like when you're talking to God, is that like a lot of talking, or is it that you have to concentrate on just your breath? And so that would constitute what is mindfulness meditation or mindfulness. And so I'm wondering whether praying is a form of mindfulness or is it different?
Yeah. I think we could talk all night about that too, frankly. And I've had many conversations with my students on that as well. I've heard of centering prayer. Is that something that you practice, Pearl? Did she say yes? Yeah.
Yes. Centering prayer.
I think I've had many conversations with one-on-one students about their practice of centering prayer. I don't practice that, but what I have heard from, again, my students and from what I've just observed in my training and practice is that there's no right or wrong way to practice this. Like, I think that that's one of the main things is that however this works for you, if you're going to do something that goes like against some of your beliefs or how, like what really draws you in and really lights you up, then you're not going to practice it. Like, I feel like if you're really into the centering prayer or in very much with alongside of a certain religion, that mindfulness I call it supercharge. Mindfulness supercharges any other religious or spiritual practice, because it helps to still and solidify, to calm and to concentrate the mind so that that energy is not being wasted on all this other, like all these other peripheral things that are happening. So I've discovered that can be a really wonderful foundation for what we talked about for therapy. It can be a wonderful foundation for religion. It can be a wonderful foundation for centering prayer. I think, this is my opinion again, is that I think a form that sure, prayer is a form of mindfulness, because if you think about prayer, that's the single pointed focus, right? If your prayer is your anchor, then how could it not be? You know? So, yeah.
And a couple of more concrete examples that, you know, saying the rosary and the bead and the mead
Yeah.
and the bead and the bead and the bead, you're automatically focused to the beads.
Right.
I remember climbing in the middle of the night, Imjase near Tibet, and in front of me was our Buddhist Sherpa, and he had the Tibetan prayer beads, and just his recitation, you know, in a language I didn't understand, but just as he went bead by bead with recitation, it's different, but not that different than, you know, counting sheep or counting or a focused scan. You have this anchor, but then you bring into it, obviously, the prayer that is the anchor, if you will, whether it's with a rosary bead or through other ways of prayer.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So it looks to me like you might have some sort of a Fitbit type of watch on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My question is, have you incorporated any sort of biofeedback or using your watch in any way to accentuate your mindfulness?
Sometimes I feel like my watch takes me away from that, because it's like, oh, you should be getting at least 10,000 steps and you haven't gotten there yet. And I feel like it's kind of nags me. But when you asked about what helps me, there was one of my last, so in order to teach my MBSR, you have to go do long silent meditation retreats, multi-day. So 5 days, 7 days, 10 days of no talking, practicing meditation, eating meditation, walking meditation, sitting meditation from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. And I remember and this was maybe just about a couple of years ago, I remember laying down in my bedroom that was it was just a bed and a little sink, and it was just me, and it was in between some sessions, and I was laying down and just practicing my own body scan, and I had my Fitbit on, and I was watching my heart rate, and it was fascinating because I don't know, at that time, I bet my normal resting heart rate would have been about 60, I would say, around that. And I kept watching it go lower and lower and lower. I was just trying, like, how low could I get this? Like, if I stood really still and I really practice, and, you know, just not working myself up, I'm like, how low could it go? And I remember seeing 42 on there, which I have never seen my heart rate that low ever in my entire life. So that's the only thing that I'm like, that's really interesting. I have a lot of students that even have like blood pressure cuffs that they have to measure, and they will measure it before their practice. They do their practice and they measure it after, and they say it's markedly lower after they do it, especially in heart rates. It's so cool to watch that too.
Well, Allison, we are out of Yes, thank you. We are out of time. This is wonderful. So Allison Peet has been our guest. She is a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor. And Allison, Allison also is an instructor at the Mercy One Richard Deming Cancer Center and helps teach and coach mindfulness for our patients. If individuals watching this program want to get involved in a structured mindfulness-based stress reduction, how would they go about connecting with you or with an instructor?
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to give my email out. It's pretty simple. So it's my full name all together. So it's Allison Peet, ALLISON PEET @gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to me. I have many resources over the years that I've been keeping track of, whether it's online, whether it's in person. So I can absolutely steer you in the right direction. I'd be happy to do that. So again, Allison Peet, PEET @gmail.com. Happy to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Allison. This has been a lot
pleasure.
of fun and
Thank
very
you for inviting me.
educational. Thank you for being with us. If you're watching us right now and you know someone that would benefit by watching this program, good news, this program will be available on demand beginning tomorrow at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and also the Mercy Cancer Center website. I hope to join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.